this episode, we're going to talk about why monarchy is better than democracy. No, I'm just kidding. What we're actually going to talk about is why the INTJ should never talk politics. And I think the first place is we're obviously too smart for politics. Also kidding again.
Well, okay, too smart. The word smart is very subjective. Like, here's my thing, is a lot of INTJs can't sense the room at all. So one could argue that that's too dumb for politics.
Yes, the INTJ is the least likely to appealing to the audience of 2021, 22. They don't have that natural gregariousness. They don't have that natural charisma and charm that you need in front of the TV screen. Like I just realized this about myself actually, is that when I think I'm coming across in a certain way, if I were to say something simple like, that's a great idea. That's what I think I'm sounding like when I say it, but what I'm actually doing is, it's a great idea. In my head, I think I'm coming across as like very warm and emotional, and I have a lot of expression on my face. I think I can't train that. And that would be a problem in front of the TV. They'd be like, he said that's a great idea, or he said something nice, but his face was completely slack and devoid of any emotion. I
mean, I think you could work on it if it was definitely like your choice to do that, if you made a huge effort to do it. So yeah, you probably couldn't run for office. Like you wouldn't be charismatic enough for the camera. I know a lot of times you think you're super animated and then you'll like rewatch a video and be like, wow, I was monotone or something like that. So you couldn't appeal like to like the popular vote per se. But I mean, the way your brain works, I feel like would appeal to some portion. It just, you wouldn't win.
Yeah, and the brain part you're talking about, I think it's really the introverted intuition or the NI aspect of the INTJ's brain. It doesn't connect the right dots to make sense universally. It doesn't have a universal appeal. So I think in a debate especially, or when I'm trying to get an idea across, I think it would just be so convoluted if I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to deliver it in the moment. And I think in high pressure, the INTJ is not good. We've thought about it. We've thought about the scenario coming up, how we're going to like rebuttal or rebut someone's attack. And it just like, for me, turns into mush.
So you think it's just because you're put on the spot?
I think so. I think in high stakes, like if you could debate via like a comment on the internet or a carefully thought out scripted video, much better. But in the moment, just don't have it. I really don't have it.
I mean, also I feel like INTJs would typically say like modern politics is just sort of basic, right? And INTJs think they're super smart all the time, right? But my thing is like, just because you're into conspiracy theories doesn't mean like you're a genius. Like you're like, oh, I connect all these dots, and how come all these dumb people don't connect the dots? But like, maybe the dots don't need to be connected.
Yeah. That would be, I always feel like that is the natural progression of the INTJ mind, is to suddenly, and for some people like very frighteningly go down a rabbit hole that is, okay, now I've lost you. You had me at the beginning, but then I made a connection or a leap that I don't feel good about, and now I want to retract my vote. Or I'm not on the same page as you anymore. And that tends to be into going to conspiracy theories, or what's really going on here is this. And sometimes we can be too concise where we say, oh, it's all just about reptilians. As I've said on our video about why the INTJ is a great conspiracy theorist, is that will just go from the normal conversation you have with people about conspiracy theories to your national platform.
Well, okay, you imply a lot as an INTJ, and I've had to have a conversation with you about like, okay, you can't just give a one-liner, because some people will just take it face value and then decide you're cuckoo birds, right? And you'll be like, well, that's because they're dumb. Like they didn't look past, the deeper meaning or whatever. It's like, no, like whose fault is it really? Because that just shows that you're not communicating well enough to people. So like you'll say something you think is a joke, and you go, well, if they think 3 layers down, they'll get it.
Yeah.
But they won't.
No.
And so they'll just be like, I don't know, that INTJ guy's like kind of weird. I can't be around him because I don't get him. You know.
The I don't get him part is part of, if you're underdeveloped, or you are aware of yourself but decline to do any sort of deep work on yourself, you'll never develop that extroverted feeling that, as you know, I've talked about many times, and everyone knows here in the community, that FE is a very negative or underutilized, underdeveloped, however you want to describe it, trait of the INTJ. So I guess if you were really wanting to go into politics in this day and age, you would have to have training specifically on FE, just because it is the most important cognitive function in politics.
Yeah, you want to talk about your feelings and your hopes and your dreams in politics, because that kind of ropes people in. And if, as an INTJ, you are less feeling oriented and more, I don't know, outcome oriented, like future outcome though, not like tomorrow get the checklist done, but future outcome. Some people really can't think that far in the future, number one, and number two, it doesn't appeal to them enough because they want to feel good right now. And you're just, INTJ maybe is a little bit, would you say like utilitarian?
I think there's definitely a utilitarian part of the INTJ. I would say more the ISTJ, like yourself, would be slightly more utilitarian than the INTJ.
Because you're more of a visionary than I am, per se.
I think you're right, but it still rubs people the wrong way, because what they both require, both types really require self-sacrifice or not being hedonistic. Like, instead of looking like politics does in a very like cycle-based every 4 years, like instead of the next 100 years, like what is the decisions we make today going to do the next 100 years? It's all about like, what can I get now? What is going to happen to me tomorrow? I can't think too far because my life circumstances don't allow me to. That's politics that we have now. So I think I've asked when I was on Rational Typology talking with Gabriel, and also John Beebe has said this, and even in my most recent interview with Linda Behrens, they said that in politics, NI is the most neglected function, which is what's going to happen in the future, or what will the future be?
It's nearly impossible, because if you know you're only going to be there for maybe 8 years, how can you make a 100-year plan? Because you just know the way our politics works is just flip-flop, back, forth. So you just know something's going to get in the way to accomplish that 100-year goal. So I think even if you are a visionary and you become a political leader in some way, I think you're going to be crushed by the reality of like, no, that's not how things are done. Nothing actually ever gets accomplished here. We're just trying to, continue how it was before, because people don't like change.
They don't like change, and there's a weird paradox about the INTJ, because when you look up quotes from INTJs, you'll see things like, Elon was like, we're going to do it no matter what. As God is my bloody witness, we're going to make it happen. And then people would like quote Hannibal, I'll either find a way or make a way. So that's like a mindset that they craft for the INTJ. But I'm telling you that this reality that Dan is talking about is, once it bumps up against us too much, we suddenly throw out all those cool quotes and go, I'm not going to do this. I'm done. I'm not going to try to destroy this system or break the structure because there's too much against me right now.
Well, do you mean you go along to get along, or do you mean you feel like you're backed into a corner and you quit and you leave?
I would feel like I would have the attitude like I'm going to do everything I can to fix this, to make this different. But then butting up against the reality, which sometimes we're not good at believing that we can change it, we'll just give up eventually.
Okay, so you're not wanting to change like small things. You're wanting to change the entire structure of how things work, which is why people feel like it's really abrasive.
Right. Just like, I've done videos about Bitcoin. That's a change to money. That's a very small, people are like, no, they're the dollar. And I go, no, we'll change. We're not going to think about money not in terms of the dollar. Well, that's the kind of thing that in reality, you can't implement tomorrow, and you cannot implement it in 4 years or 8.
So you think people just give up because it can't be done? I mean,
I think I would give up. Or the INTJ. I mean, in my 4 years, you couldn't change.
In your 4 years, yeah. But in something like, I don't know, you might be able to get like bipartisan support on Bitcoin because it's money related.
Right.
It's not, it's not like social welfare or anything,
I think you make a good point. I would be able to convince 2 to 5% of the people that support me, but I wouldn't be able to get mainstream adoption on a subject to the point where it could actually make the change that's necessary. So I think that many INTJs view politics and people's opinions and view mainstream news as, well, if this is what most people are thinking, like, I'm just not even going to delve into it.
Well, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're leading with NI, or at least NI is in your top function stack, you not only are thinking long term, but it might be very nuanced. And it's hard for you to discuss details because you suck at communicating them. So you have all these great big ideas, but then you can't really communicate them. And so with the setup of mainstream media as your outlet to communicate your ideas, it's got to be quick. It's got to make sense right away.
Yeah.
You can't have nuance. You can't like take a bunch of time to explain yourself.
Yeah, you don't have that much time to explain the overarching mega political shifts that have happened since the beginning of man in a 30-second TV ad that plays on your local radio and or local station.
Or even in a debate.
In a debate, yeah.
So does that mean that, this is an interesting question. Do you think that INTJs tend more towards like writing long form essays or books?
Yeah.
To get their full ideas out.
Yeah. And I think that's one way they would rather utilize, if they were going to be going down a political path, is to be in a, like, by the pen and not the sword, or by the pen, not the microphone. They would rather do it there and have a more well thought out, nuanced. They don't really have to face the masses, the unwashed masses that they would be trying to convince in a political setting. That's why I think that their impact would be better heard. I just think INTJs would rather they decide very early, I'm not going to be a politician, and they go down a business or they go down a consultant field where they can have the autonomy to implement their radical ideas or the radical way of doing things to affect a smaller group rather than like, let's just change society. So
ultimately, what we're saying is not only should INTJs like really not consider running for politics, but they honestly, in my humble opinion, as someone married to an INTJ, should never even like really talk politics, even at like a dinner party or something, because you just don't, you have the inability to sense the room and to know if you're upsetting people or to know if they're following what you're saying, picking up what you're putting down kind of thing. I mean, I'm not saying, that's not to say that you should never discuss your ideas, because then you're going to be trapped in your head and you're going to feel like you have no one to talk to. But, so you want to find other semi-like-minded people, that have different ideas so you can have an intelligent discourse. But to realize that honestly, that's all it can do. It can't pick up in popularity all your ideas. You're going to have this little niche of friends that like to talk about Bitcoin or whatever your harebrained ideas are. And that's about it.
Yeah, I think you just have to come up with sort of phrases and or tactics to avoid getting into political discussions, or to use your FE, but in a way that's kind of funny. And I think one thing I'll leave you with is like, if someone gives you a very, what you would consider uneducated take, you can just go, wow, that sounds like you've done research. Or
you've put a lot of thought into that. It really sounds like you feel strongly about that.
Yeah.
Like you can keep the tact there. Anyway, I mean, you taught me some tact too, so I'm not, the preacher here.
Right.
Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think, have you been an INTJ or know an INTJ that was successful in politics or can discuss politics with the right people? Or do you think you agree with us that it should kind of just be left alone? Let us know in the comments below and click subscribe. See you guys.
I try. to live without you. Just can't go